there's a whole bunch of pickup fights going on, and there's this big court all set up. And I'm like, yeah, court. I mean, yeah, it's important and I like it more or less, but there's fighting to be done. So I'm going to go fight these pickup fights. And I don't know, somebody told me, hey, you really shouldn't go. You'll be a distraction from court. And I'm like, fine. And then, a little while later, all these other people are out there pickup fighting. I'm like, I am not going to be a distraction. If everybody else gets to, I can too. So I'm like trying to find my gauntlets, which were mysteriously hidden behind my wagon in the leaves. I'm like, well, they must have just fallen out, whatever. So I dug them out. I put them on. I found my sword, which was kind of behind the tree. I'm like, well, fine, whatever. I don't know why it's put there, but I'll grab it. And I head off. And I think it was Sir Siegfried from Yarvetler who was like, Roisin, you cannot go fight. No. I'm like, what is with you? It's war. Yeah, they're sitting there, blah, 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 blah. Great. But I want to go fight. There's pickup fights. I could learn something maybe. He's like, no, sit down and watch court. This is your king. This is your kingdom. Do this thing. I'm like, fine. So I kneel down, and a bunch of people mysteriously pack in behind me, like, you cannot leave. And I'm like, fine. So I'm there. And I don't know, these three of the knights of Northshield, and happen to be from Yarvetler, all start, walking up into court. And I'm like, okay, another thing. They're probably gonna, arrange for some army to join us or something, or who knows. And they start talking, and finally they're like, we beg a boon. I'm like, three people don't beg a boon. One knight begs a boon. What's going on? This is weird. So I am paying attention, right? And then they're like, they said my name. And I'm like, my name? What are you talking about? And I'm like, well, okay, they said my name. So, but they haven't called me into court. It's just these knights like doing whatever they're doing. So eventually they call me up into court, and they put me on vigil, and I'm like, okay. And sometime in there, they had basically called all the knights of the known world up to kind of witness, I guess, or be there as saying that they agreed, which was pretty amazing. And at the time, I didn't get it. I was just kind of overwhelmed. But looking at like the videos later, I was like, wow. I'm still just like, I can't really like get that. It's too much. So I sat, well, so I went back to camp. Basically, we fought the field battles, and I was a mess. I don't think I even knew which end of whatever weapon I was holding. I was just like, okay, I'm fighting, I guess. I don't know. We went back to camp, to my tent, and finally I'm alone, and we're sitting around essentially a campfire, and in this household. And basically the only thing that I was supposed to do for my vigil, which was set up for that night, was I had to wear something, right? I'm like, well, usually people on vigil wear white, but I had nothing white. I was completely like, I don't know. And this young man was like, well, I have this dress, essentially a really long tunic that I sewed myself, and it's one of two pieces of garb that I own, but I think it'll fit you if you want to wear it. I was like, oh wow. So he not only I wore it, I tried to give it back and he wouldn't accept it back. I was like, you don't have any garb except for this. You have to take it back. And he's like, no, that's like yours. Like, this is like your moment. And this is what you wore. And this is like cool. I'm like, wow.
I had heard a rumor many months before Golf Wars that we had no rapier general. in my mind, the least qualified to go and try to put myself out there for it. But I thought, I've been going to Gulf Wars. That was going to make my 15th year. So I guess I wasn't as inexperienced as I may have thought. So when I contacted Vlad and Petronella that year, I basically sent an email out saying, "Hi guys, I heard a rumor. If it's true and you need somebody, give me a call," because I didn't know anything that was going on for that year other than hearsay and rumors on that. Couple months go by and I haven't heard anything from them except I think a polite thank you for reaching out. And it was about 2 weeks before, maybe longer. They might be able to correct me on that. But about 2 weeks or so before Gulf Wars was the official, yes, I had the position. I didn't think I was ready, but I thought, well, we might as well go give it a go. I had been talking to Vlad and Petronella before that, so it wasn't just thrown on me from them. I won't say that. But I felt so unprepared that year. I got my schedules made up. I'm a list person, so I printed all of the war points. I highlighted them. I got a list of all my combatants who were planning on going down that year. Looking at my list, I had one down. I had I had 3 OCVs, and I had one of the order, and that was it. The rest of my 25 to 30 fighting force were either new, as in within the year, or had only been fighting for maybe 5 years or so. But I can do a lot with a group of relative new folks and just a few experienced ones. So I thought this was going to be a fun war. Myself and my XO, Stabby, or Audrey, we went down, and first day down there for the generals meeting, I had heard stories from other people about generals meetings at wars and how long they can get and how painful they can sometimes be. Audrey and I went to our meeting as the general and XO and gave our numbers, and then proceeded to sit there for probably a good 45 minutes while they debated whether or not one of the new war points for Rapier would still be considered a war point, less than 24 hours away from the battle. Finally, I think it was decided that it would still stay on the schedule but would not be counted towards the war points, where I thought, we're still here to fight. We're crazy Northshielders. We've been pent up for months in the snow and the ice and the rain. We'll be there, whether it's a war point or not. So went back to camp, proceeded to, I think, drink an entire bottle of cordial by myself from that meeting, and then continue on with the rest of the night. Next day, got up, and I could tell I was nervous. I was terribly nervous. I don't remember the exact time of that first battle, but I did inform the troops, hey, we're not required to be here. It's not a war point. But I knew the Northshielders that were down there were going to be of the same mind frame I was. We just drove how many miles and how many hours we're going to fight. And it was a really fun battle. It was an interesting scenario that they still hadn't quite worked out, but it was a fight. We hadn't fought for so long. Now, something that I know I didn't tell many people, I think only my husband and a few other people from our Gulf Wars encampment know about. Before we went to the first battle, I was so nervous, I threw up. I did. I felt so not right for the job. I didn't think I could do it, even though deep down in my heart I could, and others knew I could as well. So I cleaned myself up, got into my gear, went off to the field, and we proceeded to have an amazing battle for that first one that technically didn't count as a war point. The next day, I believe, was our field battle. Or not field, the town. The modified town battle. I remember in that one, I basically played line commander. I stood about halfway between the battle and the res point, directing troops, screaming at the top of my voice, trying to make sure everyone was going where they needed to. My favorite memory on that battle, I will say, unfortunately did not come from Northshield, but from the mythical Kalantiri rapier fighters, who are like unicorns that you don't scare in the wilderness. When they came up from Res Point, there was a group of 5 to 6 of them surrounding their Lady Royal at the time. And I thought, it's a res battle. We are trying to take flags or trying to take buildings in this battle. We haven't taken many because the other side's been doing a really good job. So I yelled at the Kalantiris. Kalantiri lords and ladies, would you do me a favor? And they answered, yes, Northshield General, what would you like? I'd like that building right there on the other side of the field. They looked over at it, looked back at me, nodded their heads, and proceeded to do some sort of Kalantiri war chant that I'm not certain if the building was going to stand by the end of their push on that. We did get the building. We did not keep it for long. But that was one of the highlights of that. They just screamed into battle. It was glorious. I don't remember on that one if we won or lost, but as Gulf Wars goes, it's a battle of friends or a war of friends. So then the next battle that we fought was the field battle. The field battle is one of those that you get in the gear, you stand around more than you actually fight. But it was a fun battle to try to get to because we had just finished the heavy ravine right before it. I do fight both, heavy and light. I'm a combat archer on the heavy field. So I had just shot close to 100 arrows on the heavy ravine, and I will say I was exhausted. Also, not well known either, I had twisted my ankle in the ravine. So as I'm trying to unload my heavy gear into our cart to be taken back to camp, I'm putting on my rapier gear and lacing my boots up just a little tighter. And then get to the field battle a little late. Audrey was great and was acting as my XO before I got to the field battle. But once I got there, we all conglomerated and looking for the other generals of our side. We had the Anstioran general, and we had the Kalantiri general, and myself. I believe that's all we had on our side that year. So as we found the other generals, we asked, what's the game plan? What were the allies? What would you like us to do? We were told it would be really great if we do hammer and anvil. I'm thinking, great, Northshield's a great hammer. We attack, we're ferocious. You and Kalantiri would make great anvil for our for Anstiora's hammer. I'm like, okay, we can do it. We can do it. That's what we were asked to do. Us Northshielders, we can do what we are asked. And that first bout we did. We were a great anvil, but there was no hammer. So we lost the first bout of the field battle, which is a three-part for the war point, but 5 if we needed to go on for that. So second round, as we're switching sides on the field, I go over to the Anstioran general and the Kalantiri general, and I go, so what's the plan for round 2? I was told, well, let's try that again, but we'll be a little more aggressive. Like, if you would like aggressive, I got about 25 fighters right behind me that would love to be aggressive for you. No, this will work this time. It'll work. We'll keep you in the middle, Northshield. Kalantari will be on the far end and Storia on the other. I didn't think that was a very good plan. So go back to my line. Vlad comes up to me. So what's the plan? Well, they want us to do the same thing as before. He kind of looked at me and he goes, okay, what's the real plan? Okay, the real plan is we're going to do a double hammer and anvil. Except Northshield is going to be both hammers. So I told my troops what I planned on doing, and we punched through the center of the line beautifully. Munch, munch, munch down to the Kalantari side. Munch, munch, munch down to the Anspioran side. All of a sudden, I see these two splits in the field battle. So we've got one fight going on the right-hand side on the low battle, and then there's the side up on the left. The left is doing great. The left is holding their own. I look down at the right, and there's about 3 of Northshielders and allies against probably about 8 to 9, and holding their own, but I could tell that something wasn't going to go in their way in the next couple minutes. So I grabbed one of the other folks from Northshield, bopped him on the shoulder and said, hey, follow me. And we didn't run. We walked very quickly into engagement, and we went and supported the Northshielders and the allies on that far right side. I was told after the battle by Vlad, who was watching it, if the 2 of us hadn't gone down to support that side, they probably would have fallen, and the support from that right side may have overtaken our left. So Vlad was asking, okay, who were those 2 people? I didn't recognize them. I looked him straight in the eyes, and I'm like, Vlad, one of them was me. Oh, okay, good to know. I love Vlad. So I thought, and then the other one, the other general, I gave the other general's name as well. So then I figured at the end you'd get the flag, because we always get a flag at the end of every battle. One Northshielder gets to take the flag home or back to camp until the next war point. So that's what I thought that was all about. So we won the second engagement. Third engagement, I don't remember what we did for the scenario, but I do remember we won that one. So I do know we took the field battle that year. And at the end of the field battle, or after the 3, they brought out the tank, because they brought the tank down again. But because of my ankle, I sat out the friendship battles. I let my XO and I let my other command staff go and play. I sat on the sidelines babying a sprained ankle that I had forgotten to tell anybody about. So after the friendship battles were done on the field battle, we all went and gathered around the tank, and Vlad and Petronella were there. They were giving out, I figured they were giving out the flag for the battle. So they did, but it wasn't to who I thought. So I well-deserved, very well-deserved, but I was a little disappointed going, he asked for who did that charge or who did that helpfulness on the flank, and I thought it was going to go to him. And then all of a sudden, they bring out the awards for the Vitruvius, or the Norbander, as a lot of us still call it. Not realizing that was why he wanted my name and the other combatant's name, was I got my Vitruvius at that battle. And we say it's for doing epic stuff, but doing epic stuff well. You do the epic stuff and it fails, you don't get the award. So that was a surprise to me. I wasn't expecting that. That was a highlight of the week as it was going on. And looking at the schedule, we just had one battle left, which was the Ravine. And of course, the Ravine for Rapier always seems to be scheduled on the latest day it possibly can be, after a week full of rain. So we're waiting and waiting and waiting to hear if we were even going to have a Ravine. Past years, we have canceled the Ravine for Rapier because it's just not safe. Understandable. We waited and we thought, maybe we can do the ravine this year. Maybe this year it'll be dry enough. And somebody went down to the ravine that morning on Friday, and it was called. No, we would not be fighting the ravine in the ravine. So they decided, well, we'll still give the rapier fighters their war point, and we'll still get a battle made up. We'll still do a capture the flag. That was done on a semi-flat surface out front of the castle facade in a very wonderfully wet patch of grass. The less I speak of that battle, probably the better. It was probably one of the craziest, sloppiest, messiest ones that I have been in. I have heard stories that the calibration was not good on that. Hopefully none of our Northshielders were injured, and hopefully none of our Northshielders injured anyone. But for an emergency battle scenario, it worked out all right. About halfway through it, though, completely lost my voice. I had been screaming the whole week long, screaming commands and screaming orders and trying to catch open areas and direct troops. By the end of that first scenario of their modified ravine, I had no voice left. All I could do was croak. They decided not to do the second half of that battle. Again, they were going to do a flip and then continue doing it, but because of the weather and the ground circumstances, they did cancel that. So that, again, don't know if we won, don't know if we lost, but Golf Wars is all about friends and the points don't matter, even though we keep track of the points most of the time. So then after the battle for the modified ravine, we held a small court to do the banner ceremony again, and all gathered around. I don't remember if I was holding. I remember I was holding something and leaning on it terribly because the battle was tiring and fun and just crazy. As we're standing there up in court, I happened to see a peak of yellow come out of Petronella's bag. During the ceremony, they opened court and they gave me my OCV for that crazy week that we endured. I found out that Petronella had run to the shops to find cloth, yellow cloth, to give me something. She went to the linen merchant, if I remember correctly, because this is the sash that she actually did give me. I knew it was done in a hurry because I had never seen anything from Petronella given out with pins before. So I knew it was an emergency. They needed to grab it. But as they told the story about how no one had come up or everyone they had asked for being general that year wasn't able to make it, just with plans or personal things going on or just finances in general. No one that they had asked was able to make it to be general. And then Petronella said, out of the blue comes this email from me. Again, in my mind, the least qualified person to possibly go down and lead a bunch of people who are fighting rapier. But she said, I stepped up. I stepped up when they needed someone. I stepped up when the call was held. So in my mind, I may still feel a little bit of that imposter syndrome. I know that I did my best down at war. And then at the end of the little ceremony or the end of court there, they also told me that I would be receiving the war banner, which is what I have hanging up behind me right now. It's our war banner from the last Golf Wars we were able to fight at. I treasure it in one of my SCH treasures and probably always will. I bought a special banner pole that my husband got, and he rigged it up so that we can take it to events so I can display it proudly for what I have done. It's amazing to feel that I was able to accomplish something that at the time I never thought I could. But once I did, I'm certainly glad that I took that step and actually put myself out there in that scary situation. And I think we had a lot of fun that year. It was a bunch of people who, when I went around that very first day to greet them, a lot of them would say, "Hey, I just authorized a month ago in Rapier." Awesome. We're going to have fun. I am definitely going to make this a fun year where our numbers were about the same, but our experience for how many folks had been to a Golf Wars before may have been less. I still think we did Northshield proud, and we had a wonderful year that year. It was just amazing.
So Golf Wars really holds a special place in my heart as my first big event. Even I think I'd only been in not quite a year, and I went to Golf Wars. So probably my favorite fighting story did not happen at my first golf event, but happened at my second golf event. And that was watching another fighter, actually. It wasn't something that happened to me, but it was something that was really inspiring to me as a fighter, which was to watch another fencer during the ravine battle at golf hold the line very strongly. And backing up a little bit, I will say that we fought with Callantyr that day, who is kind of renowned for their shield wall in Rapier. They have really big shields. They have a very specific style of fighting because of the Callan steel requirements. And Callantyr was holding the middle in the ravine battle, successfully holding the middle for quite a while. And they were killed pretty quickly, probably within about 15 seconds, by a set of 3 White Scarf / mods. They were out kingdom, so I didn't pay 100% attention to the regalia, but they were at that peer level. And they were kind of decimated, boom, 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 boom. And then up from the line, from the respawn point, comes a Northshielder. But this particular Northshielder was dressed completely in purple, Callantyr colors. And I think unknowingly, initially, stepped into this huge shield gap. And they were already pushing us on the one flank. So we were kind of already starting to rotate. And then we lost our middle, we lost our shield line. And this individual stepped in, and the amount of confidence that this person showed in stepping into this massive gap against these 3 rather intimidating individuals who had just destroyed that shield line. I watched 3 peers take a step back from this, not a Grant level, still AOA level fighter. And she managed to hold them off. She killed one of them and managed to hold them off for the 15 seconds it took for that Callantyr shield line to come thundering back and take her on. And there is a picture of this event, which I really appreciate, because one of our Northshield photographers managed to get a photo of this fighter holding the line. And seeing that was actually really just an inspiring moment, in that having the confidence is such a big part of the game that we play. I think being able to project that, even if other people think perhaps that confidence is ill-deserved or not warranted, is a little bit irrelevant. I think at some point you have to go for it. At some point you have to go for that thrust. You have to kind of stop thinking, follow some of your instincts that you train in, and really go for what you want, which is to win and make sure you don't die and make sure the other guy dies, which is the basis of our game a little bit. Always good-naturedly, of course, but still. that's probably my favorite fighting story from Gulf Wars, although there are some close seconds, particularly the field battles, though I know that they're unpopular with the rapier crowd, and I understand why. It's harder to gain glory on the field battle. It's easier to get manhandled by the enemy. It's easier for your fellow fighter to let you down a little bit. But it also allows for some of the greatest heroic moments, I think. And running around the field, getting a couple deaths from behind, getting many deaths from behind, making sure you don't trip over anthills adds a bit of realism too at Gulf Wars. I feel like if I were in the Middle Ages, that would be a very real concern, is that there would be no pest control. And fire ants, fighting ants, you wouldn't want to step on those. That would be a terrain feature. The sun in your eyes, it being really hot, you fought all day already. It's also the place where we tend to try out new ideas. I personally have said before, I'm not a huge fan of the spear. I think that it changes our game into a pike game, which I think heavy kind of already covers, and not as much of an urban environment type rapier game that we strive more for. But then again, on the field, we're already bending those assumptions, I think, a little bit. But besides the spear as a kind of test, we've also done the tank, one of my favorite Northshield moments, as I think it is for many Northshielders. Vlad posing on top of his tank with a spear and picking off the enemy pretty much at will. And using the tank as a defensive mechanism is really interesting too, but then your enemy gets to use it also. And it just was really, it added a fun element there. So I appreciated that. Some of my favorite moments center around the tourneys. Probably my favorite personal moment of fighting was when I fought in the Diamond Tourney. And that was a big deal for me, especially as kind of a newer fighter. I was still an AOA level at the time. It was my second Gulf Wars. I had been in for about 2 years. And somebody asked Jean Robert to step in as a Diamond Tourney participant. Jean Robert is my Don. Can't really see, but Jean Robert is my Don. And he had to go run some errands during the Diamond Tourney event, some important family errands, which warranted him being gone there. So he pulls that person aside and says, well, I can't fight, but I have a cadet now. I was Jean Robert's first cadet, currently his only cadet. And he said, Felicius can fight for you. And I appreciated that knight's generosity, chivalry, good nature, in not hesitating a moment to see someone who was at my level and say, sounds great, and with no hesitation. Of course, then that meant I had to show up and perform ideally to that standard, which that confidence that that person gave me inspired some of my own. So I went, I got ready. I took a moment to kind of listen to a little music, which I normally don't do before a tourney, but to get in the right headspace, to make sure I felt really confident, both in my gear, in my mental and emotional space, and get ready to do the best that I could. Even if I lost, I thought every bout, even if I never got another touch, I wanted to do my absolute best so that I could walk away from that field feeling proud of what I had done. So I will say that the leaders in our community were really helpful in making sure that I maintained that presence of mind. When I got to the Diamond Tourney, they were there. They knew what was going on. They made sure they were present. And they both gave me space and support as I needed it. There was no pushing of support or of advice. There was a lot of find your own center, really just a great crew. I couldn't ask for better in that. When the time came, then I don't know if you're aware, the Diamond Tourney runs on a heavy fighter goes and then a rapier fighter goes, and you kind of switch on and off that way. So as I got ready, I watched my heavy fighting partner do some of the most impressive heavy fighting moves I've seen. This was not our kingdom, but this knight did a full swirl around, like he jumped in the air, went fully around and whacked the other guy a really good hit. And I thought, so we're one of two, and I didn't want to let that down, but I was facing a mod at that point. So I walk into the field, a little bit nervous, but feeling a sense of calm, I think, because of the support I'd received. And I managed to win 2 of the 3. The first hit was not mine, but the second 2 were. And defeating that challenger was fantastic. That felt so good. I don't know if I've ever had a moment where I felt higher on the field than that. Now, shortly thereafter, let it be said, I did not win my second bout, which was against John Drake, who had just been defeated by someone who I think he thought was probably lower in skill than him. And so there was a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and I lasted all of 0.1 seconds against him for the first bout. And then the second bout, I managed to hold out, I think, for a whole, 8 seconds before I finally succumbed to his natural speed. But it didn't lessen what I had done. And like I said, I think even if I hadn't won any passes in that tournament, still that confidence and the support of my people would have really felt good. And I think at that point, I felt part of the community more than I probably ever had before, except for possibly when I was made a cadet, because that was so much support, so much affirmation was given by my teachers. When I say my teachers, I mean anybody who's ever taught me anything. And that includes people who are my peer, well, not actual peers, but people who are other fighters like me at my level. Just that support has been really amazing. I think that sense of community is really important to rapier fighters. I think that it comes a little bit more naturally sometimes with heavy fighters. It's really personal to fight heavy, and so I think it's more easily fostered sometimes. But rapier fighting can have the same sense of community. Not always, and not for everybody, and everybody makes mistakes. no community is perfect. We're a very small community compared to the heavy fighting community, and we're a younger community as well. So sometimes it takes a little bit more effort, more mistakes are inherent to our game, both on and off the field, I think. But I think the bonds that are forged can be just as important. The stories that we tell are just as exciting. I think of every time I've seen someone made a cadet or a student, the amount of pride that we all feel, that even passersby, people who aren't in the rapier community specifically, but are SCA, that kind of swelling togetherness that you feel, it's palpable. You can definitely sense that it's there. And there are some negative things, but Gulf Wars has always been that place where we find the most positive stories and experiences. I'm going to finish off with my final story, which is not a fighting story, but I hope you'll excuse me and I cut this one out, but that's okay. I would say my favorite non-fighting story, but still relevant, was when a vigil was placed on another MOD. And my master, I had just been made a cadet. When Talbot was put on his vigil, he was sat like a king, as is proper, though not an actual king, I guess we can edit that part out. He was sat very regally in a high back chair at the Green Dragon. Everyone was reveling around him, but he seemed a little bit out of place. He seemed a little bit overwhelmed with what had happened. It's a big deal. It's a big honor. He seemed very happy, but kind of like an island in the sea. And I thought, this man looks like he needs a drink. And unbeknownst to me, there was a flask that none had been able to open. It was filled with a honeyed beverage that had stuck the flask tight. A knight had tried to open it. A mod had tried to open it. 3 times peer had tried to open it. When I saw him there, I asked my dom politely, could I have the flask from him, which he had so generously shared with me before. And he said, well, it's not going to do you any good. You can't open it. You won't be able to open it. And I took the flask and I tapped it 3 times on the bar. And I said, sometimes all it needs is a little tap. And I opened it and he laughed and he looked at me and laughed. And I brought it to the vigilant. And I said, something that I have heard is like angel's tears. It is so sweet. It is so delicious. And he looked at me a little askance and he said, not much. Like, oh, okay, let's see. And he drank. He's like, oh, that's really good. Took another long pull. And then at that moment, a lot of his soon-to-be fellow MODs came around and started talking. And to see him kind of light up after that was really gratifying. Not saying that that was why he lit up. Not saying that that's why they came by. It was just one of those circumstances where by happenstance, all of the timing seemed to be just right. Kind of the magical moments that happen at Gulf Wars. And that's really what Gulf Wars is about, is the opportunity for those magical moments to happen. Not intentionally, not by design, but you just kind of start to get into a flow, an intuitive flow that a lot of people seem to pick up on, and then it just keeps going. It propagates. It's a really amazing, fun experience for a lot of people, especially new people. That was my first year there. Hadn't even quite been in the SCA a year, but the people that were there were welcoming, and I would absolutely love to bring any new person to Gulf Wars. We have in the past brought new people to Gulf Wars, lent them our inexcusably small pup tents and whatnot, just for the extra laughs and faces around a fire. And every person I've brought has absolutely loved their experience at golf. I've never brought someone who said, man, I wish I hadn't gone with you, wish I hadn't listened to you, but have really enjoyed it, come out with their own good experiences, their own stories.
The war story that I have to share for you tonight is the story of the Northshield tank. The Northshield tank is based on Da Vinci's designs that, as far as we know, were never historically constructed, but we have historical precedent and design for a siege tank. And so why not build it for SCA purposes? It was put together during the reign of Vladimir Petronel II, because mundanely, Vladimir is a huge fan of historical tanks as in more modern history. And the Shire of Coldernhale put together this siege weapon that was prepared. It is a wooden box with a conical top shape that mimics the Da Vinci tank design and has large black PVC cannons all the way around it. If you haven't looked up the Da Vinci design, I highly recommend checking it out, as well as pictures of the Northshield tank. It is a lot of fun. And there was a lot of love put into it by Coldernhale. They painted griffins and hussar pinup girls and all sorts of fun stuff on the tank itself. The tank was presented to His Majesty as a surprise, and that joy was captured on video. And it was all planned ahead of time and coordinated with the war marshals for Gulf Wars to make sure that the thing adhered to Gulf Wars siege engine rules as a siege tower, is what it was classified as. Essentially, it was a sort of a Flintstone-powered wooden box that had several slots cut into it that could open up to fire crossbows out of these little windows. And there's a central sort of cupola platform that you could stand on and be out the raised top and lead the troops as Vlad did. So this tank made it to Gulf Wars, and being one of Vladimir's squires, I got to experience the fun of everybody's amazed and shocked looks and confusion as they passed our camp, because we had assembled this thing. The entire thing unbolts and flat packs down into a van, and so it had been brought there. And I highly recommend siege equipment that can pack down small and really surprise people. But it was coordinated with the Allied and enemy kingdoms to make sure that everybody would find the rules around it fair and fun. And the first time we deployed it was in the field battle, one of the war points for Gulf Wars. The field battle is a no-res scenario that we do usually 5 times, and switching sides and angles of how the field is deployed. And the strategy in the command meeting for this particular battle, I felt was a pretty good one. It was your sort of standard hammer and anvil tactic. And what that is when you have the line of your troops and the line of their troops, part of your troops, you're going to have this side be the hammer and this side be the anvil. And so the anvil's job is to engage, but also just sort of survive and delay, while the hammer side does the bulk of the killing and tries to curl the enemy and crush that back into the anvil. So with our tank, we were the anvil, and on the field that the field battle takes place on, there is like one tree, and so our strategy revolved around this tree and getting the tank near that tree to create this choke point to better funnel enemy troops into to maximize our ability to just stay and hold their forces back, turning an open field into a bit of a limited front. And while that's happening, our allies are to press through and sweep the foe. Well, Leon is called, and I had been given a specific task along with my squire brother, Osgood. Vlad had tasked us with protecting the tank because while it wouldn't serve any good to destroying the tank, you can absolutely believe that as soon as there is a siege weapon or some kind of interesting object on the field, somebody's going to get amped up and decide to charge it. And so just to keep people from slamming their bodies into the tank itself, myself and my squire brother, our jobs were to countercharge those as they came in. We marched across the field, and slow march. This box is rolling along on its wheels, powered by the folks inside it. And we get up to our point by the tree. And while I still believe our strategy was good, it fell apart because the distraction, as soon as this box started moving, Leon, all eyes were on the tank. Everybody was so excited to see what surprises this tank had in store. What was this box going to do? And the problem with that is that included our allied forces. Our hammer that was supposed to be advancing quickly and engaging and sweeping was also among the rest of the known world, standing there and watching to see what this box was going to do. And so by the time we got into position, everyone kind of snapped out of it altogether, and it was too late. The big moment to seize and take advantage of this distraction was gone. And it was a massacre. We did not do very well. But Osgood and I died gloriously defending the tank and slamming into those who would otherwise have thrown themselves upon this box. And my big takeaway from it was, as marching across this field, crossbow bolts and arrows flying back and forth, I had the tank right here on my right. And I had my shield up, as you do with any kind of siege or combat arrow scenario. And the entire time, even being that close to it, not a single bolt or arrow bounced off my shield. Nothing came my way because all of the attention from all of the enemy archers was focused on this box. Everyone was trying for those little windows that the crossbowmen were shooting out of. Everyone wanted a piece of this tank. And having an arrow magnet right beside me is something that I could go for in every battle that I've ever been in. We did later use the tank a number of times throughout that war. We had fun with it, parking it sort of between the two bridges so it could kind of shoot at different bridges. We used it to siege the gate. We had a battering ram team that we hid behind it as we approached the castle and came around to batter it out the door. And the tank actually made another appearance at a Gulf Wars when Vlad and Petronella ran for a third time. In the downtime, there was some reconstruction done to the tank before its second war, and some of the panels needed replacing or repairing. So what Vlad did is take the old wood that had been part of it, and he cut it into pieces and turned it into relics. And so I have in my hand here a piece of the one true tank. And as it was one of the tokens that was given by their majesties during the second Gulf Wars that the tank made an appearance. And so I have a little piece of Northshield history that reminds me of the fond memories I have with this fun siege engine based on Da Vinci's design, thanks to Cold and Hail.
I basically started the hunt in 2012 as a result of advice that was given to me in my Laurel's Vigil. Master Christian de Javier had made the comment that a job of a peer is to basically be a good host at a party. And that inspired the idea of let's come up with a party game to give people, help and make the game more fun for people. Additionally, at Gulf Wars, Baron Jean Vier has for a long time around the campfire made a point of asking everybody to tell their glory moments so that everybody who's there has their moment to shine in the stories. So I was trying to find something to make the SCA more fun for people, as well as giving everybody else a chance to have their fun moments. And it occurred to me one of the historic pastimes that we don't really do is hunting. So I came up with the idea of the Northshield hunt. The first one was done at Gulf Wars in 2012 for Vlad and Petronella. And the way the hunt works is you have somebody who is the mythical beast of Northshield, who is armed with two swords. Now, the swords are the foam bath toy swords that I found at Target. So you had the beast. You had a number of people who were competing to become the Royal Huntsman. They each got one foam bath toy sword. And then the huntsman could have their team of a forester and up to 6 hounds. So the forester got one of those little noisemaker party horns you'd hear at New Year's, and the hounds were allowed to only bark, and they had to stay within 20 feet of the forester. So we waited till evening of Midnight Madness at Gulf Wars when we knew there'd be a large crowd all throughout the area. And we met at the Green Dragon, which, if you haven't been to Gulf Wars, is a tavern right at the center of the main crossroads. I had arranged for the field to be effectively all of the merchant area, all the way out to the fighting fields, and everything in between, with the rule not to do anything inside of a merchant tent or over by the bardic area where it would interfere with other people's fun. But so we waited till after it got dark, and then at the given time, we released the beast out into the field. 10 minutes later, we released the hounds, and then 5 minutes after that, we released the huntsman. Whoever kills the beast comes back and becomes the new Royal Huntsman. If the beast kills the hunter, they have to go back to Res Point, which is come back to the Green Dragon. If they kill the forester, they have to come back to Res Point, and that means the hounds have to go too. And the rest point is not actually the dragon, but I had a bottle of aged tawny port. So basically, either the person or their stunt person would have to sip from the port in order to be resurrected at the hunting lodge. I figured if nothing else, Northshield would have the best res point in the known world. This was very popular. A number of hunters killed themselves just to come back to resurrect. One thing that came out of it was, even though the rules were that you could have a group of hounds, different groups decided that, we don't want to be hunting hounds, so we had hunting kittens or hunting birds, and people had a lot of fun with the animals. Because again, the whole idea is to allow people to come up with whatever shtick they wanted for themselves. So you had kittens that would be easily distracted and not actually chase things. I think one set of hounds attacked their forester and killed him, so he'd have to come back and get resurrected. Young fighters from Anstiora and Meridies both be required to go join the hunt because their instructors decided this would be a good learning experience for you. You should take part in this.
Shield my kinsmen from sorrow and from shame until fate brings us shoulder to stand as brothers again.